Hello. Hi. How are you all doing? Now let's look at what we have for you in store. So business penalties, can I deduct? Okay. And that is me, speaker information. That just to give you one more impression about Ying Sa. And Sa, that's how you say my last name. I tell you a secret. The word of Sa, S-A, is actually Mongolian last name back in the Yuan dynasty, and the emperor and in Mongolia, and really trying to make the Mongolian and the Han people, which is the Chinese people, to become one big family. It's like migrate Mongolian into China. So what he did is he gave his right-hand person a Chinese-like Mongolian name. That is Sa. So in the history book, you'll find how my last name was given by the emperor to the right-hand person. So that's where the Mongolian family started. And we have a family book all the way to Yuan dynasty. So I'm a lady in the family, so it's never going to be on the book. But my brothers, my dad and my grandpa, they are on that book. So that's in China. A lot of Chinese people don't know about that last name just because it was not really Chinese name. It is a Mongolian last name, and given to Mongolian people to be more like Chinese people. So that's my last name. That's why after I get married, I didn't change my last name because it has so much history in there. And there's only 200 some people in China that still have this last name. So it's kind of interesting, right? And no responsibility disclaimer, of course. And just be responsible to yourself and don't listen to what other people say. Doesn't really apply to you. I just had a meeting with with a potential client, and she had her situation. So I told her that, look, the best tax strategy is this way, and you go for a C corporation. Then she goes, well, I talked to my other friend. They were saying that I should have LLC, shouldn't be a C. And see, this is where you look, you're looking for answers from everywhere. People don't know your situation. So make sure that you only look for your own situation and, hire a professional to answer your question, okay? And I also tell people that, yes, when you hire a professional, and of course we all want to pay the littler the better to get the best advice, but the reality in the professional world, you would never be able to pay very little money to get the best advice. The reason is you can buy the same product, and by checking the price, and you know where to go to buy the cheapest, the same product, but knowledge and a human brain, human emotion, human's heart is not measured by money. For that reason, when you engage with a professional, and you can't really discount people's brain power. I always tell my friend or my client, when I hire professional people, when I hire a lawyer to do something for me, I never bargain the price, because you bargain the price, what you are essentially doing is you're bargain their emotion, you're bargain their thinking power, and you are giving them a framework so they will make sure that they don't charge you more, but they also don't think for more, right? So not a good way to deal with humans. Humans are very complicated creatures. So you want to make sure that if you needed good advice, you pay. And that's just how you get where you want to be, right? Okay, now fines and penalties. Can we really deduct this out of our business expense? That's the answer I want to give to you today. So what are the fines and penalties in business? Tax penalties, parking ticket, city violation code, punitive damage paid in the lawsuit, and the non-compliance resulted in fine from licensing authorities, right? Didn't I cover everything? I'm pretty sure I did. So these are all the penalties you could get. But generally speaking, if we're going to finish today's talk right now, and we tell you that anything the government penalize you, everything the government say I charge you, and that should not be a business expense. Okay, see, you hear me. I didn't say interest. I just said penalties. I just said fines and penalties. Okay, now let's just understand a little bit logistics in terms of how this thing come about, because we want things to be deducted in the business expense. So if I have a traffic ticket, I really just want to write it off my business so I don't have to pay taxes on it, right? I know you're thinking of that, and I understand where that thought come from, and because you can elaborate the situation where, if I don't deliver the pizza on time, the pizza is free, so I must hurry up, and so I got a ticket. That's a business expense. You know what? That's a good argument. That is a good argument. And if you deduct it, and the auditor comes around and said that no, penalty for a traffic ticket is not deductible, and as long as you have a business reason for it, and that penalty actually enhance your operation, and you can make a case. But not all the penalties can go like that. Now, look at this. In trade or business expenses, there is no deduction allowed for these kind of violations. Let me read it this way. I carved it out from the code, but let me read it this way to you. So for penalties and fines, no deduction shall be allowed under this chapter. What chapter? Business expense chapter. Okay, chapter U.S. Code, Tax Code, chapter 162. For business expenses, it says that no deduction shall be allowed under this chapter for any amount paid or incurred to or at the direction of a government or governmental entity in relation to the violation of any law or the investigation or inquiry by such government or entity into the potential violation of any law. So what does that mean? That just means that government rules, if you violate it, and or you'll be penalized for that, and that is not a deduction. But they did give us several exceptions. So let's look at that. Exception number 1, amount constituting restitution or paid to come into compliance with the law. Okay, that big paragraph, I'm not going to read it, but I'm going to give you an example. So basically, when the government come in to do a investigation on you and assessing damages and for things, and I'll give you a good example of Department of Labor. When they come to the restaurant, look at the wage section to see whether you have a violation of law. Did you pay overtime? Did you pay holiday 0.5? And do you have time card? And why are you making this minor working in the kitchen, right? Those kind of things. So they actually would review your document, and it would come up with calculation saying that, oh, this is this much of salary wages you didn't pay and you're supposed to come up. Then what else they give you? They give you what they call the liquidated damage. So let's say if you are assessed for $500 unpaid wages, so you're gonna write a check to your employee for the $500. But the DOL will automatically charge you another $500. So it's it's a $1,000 total charges. Okay. So now the question is, and is this deductible or not deductible? And my answer for you, and based on my study, and it is deductible, because the Department of Labor would never be able to come up with the exact number of what you owe to your worker. And they're doing the best estimate based on what they have or based on what you have. Sometimes you don't even have a record that you paid to the employee. And so the employee also didn't really give that information to DOL. Then you ended up paying them more, right? So these salary or wages they estimated is estimated number. So because that's estimated number, then with the liquidated damage, then it's basically is a estimate of the potential violation of the law, right? And with that, because it is a potential violation of the law, and whether it's violated or not, it is no way to really nail that. and you accept the charges and you move on with a better record keeping. But this big amount that you paid as a salary, it will be treated as a payroll expenses. So that is where this constituting restitution or paid to come to compliance with law come in. This is exception number 1, means that you can deduct. Number 2, amounts paid or incurred as a result of certain court orders. For example, and if the business, and we have businesses and they got sued for labor violations, so maybe, you know, the workers got injured and they didn't even have proper coverage, so they got sued and they need to pay for the damage of the bodily damage of the employee, right? And these amount that paid result of the court order, especially in the suit in which no government or governmental entity is a party, that is a deductible expense. And when they say especially, it is not a governmental, and you know, is worker comp a governmental, is quasi-governmental, okay? So really, and what really happens is whether it is a governmental or not, and if it is a lawsuit that comes in, and so a amount due for you to pay, those are considered a business expense. So that's your exception number 2. All right. So what is other exception? So there's several exceptions. There's about 5 of them. I picked the 3 because those are the most common ones we see. The exception number 3 would be the tax dues, right? Whether it's a sales tax due and property tax due or income tax due or payroll tax due, whatever that is coming in, and those can be deducted as the business expense. So that is an exception as well, even though it is a government assessed, right? So for example, when you have these payroll taxes, you have all these payroll taxes that you didn't pay. And then the government issue you penalty, issue interest, issue your amount due, and all of that you're coming through and reducing out of your business income, start paying the government. And that is part of the due that you have from the government. And I would consider, and that is exception number 3, so you can deduct. Now, someone says that, oh, Ying, why are you saying the penalty by IRS is deductible? I mean, you know, probably should not be deducted because it's a penalty. It is penalty from IRS. So first of all, I want to say that majority of the penalties that you got, you know, is typically those penalties you got typically is coming from violation of tax laws, and or you did not meet the tax obligations. Violation of tax laws could be that you are just completely ignored that you're supposed to pay taxes, but you didn't pay. So you're not following the compliance side of things, or you just have tax dues. You just keep on not paying. You know that you have tax dues, you are not paying, right? Example would include misreporting income, preparing an inaccurate tax return, or claiming false deduction, and a fail to file your return on time, not paying your tax, not paying your return on time, and the things like that. So these are the penalties by IRS. Is just one of the government. The other state government, of course, can do the same thing, but we're just talking about the government charges, right? So IRS may be able to remove and reduce some of the penalty if you act in good faith, can show reasonable cause for why you were not able to meet your tax obligation. You see, here we're landing on the obligation, okay? IRS cannot remove and reduce interest in general, and the penalty eligible for relief are including failing to file tax return, failing to pay on time, failing to deposit as required, other penalties like, for example, accuracy related penalty. That is the most often seen penalty when you are being audited, you know, on your audited conclusion, and you'll get penalized for not calculating your tax properly, right? You're not accurate. You're deducting too much. Things like that. So those are the accuracy related penalty. And what we're trying to tell you is that these penalty are abatable. These penalty are negotiable. So you want to understand, don't look at the penalty goes, oh, wow, I stuck with the penalty. And you first want to know whether you have a reasonable cause. So reasonable cause is not about to say that, oh yeah, I don't read English, so that's why I don't know. That's not a, that is a reasonable cost to you, but there is nobody said that you have to do business if you don't speak English, right? So not speaking English or not understanding IRS prints is not a good excuse. And I see that a lot. Sometimes, our firm, we speak 9 different languages. I, of course, see people coming in, their reason would be that I don't even understand what this is, Ying. That's why I didn't do it. And I always tell folks that it's our responsibility to do business in this country, to understand rules and regulation of this country. So there's no excuses for immigrant business owners versus native business owners, right? So that's not a reasonable cost. Even if you write it in, you're only going to piss some people off and you're not going to get sympathy. But reasonable cost would be something like, I got COVID, I'm just so sick, and the COVID take my concentration span away, and I could not even finish reading one word. My mind is already gone. That's a reasonable cost if you can get doctor to write you a note on that, right? Or a reasonable cost could be, I was out of the country. Nobody was checking my mail. Or a reasonable cost could be, this is happening in my company. I didn't know. And I didn't know my employee are doing fraudulent stuff. Those are reasonable costs. And of course, it is still your responsibility, but you probably can't work that out. Or you can say to IRS that, well, is my CPA just doesn't know what they're doing, so they were telling me the wrong thing. That's a reasonable cost too, right? So all of these reasonable costs be your number one to abate it, so you don't have to pay for it, right? Then number two, of course, if it is your first time, IRS is so general, and they're very generous. They don't really tell you just because this is your first time. So anybody who has penalty for that type of penalty the first time, you have a chance to get abated. Then of course, there's other statutory exceptions, like things like it's passing 10 years and so it's all gone, right? So all of that, what I'm trying to tell you is, if you have a penalty, you abate that first. But after you abate it and you failed and you got this penalty, and can you deduct the penalty out of your business expenses? Maybe not, okay? And it's really dependent. So for example, if the penalty was caused by your employee's wrongdoing, okay? And it is, you can argue that this is employees' wrongdoing, so you can even claim that back from the insurance that you buy for professional liabilities. And if you can get that covered by insurance, because that's part of your business expense, it's sort of giving the same rationale that may be able to reduce from the business expense. But if it is something that insurance doesn't even cover, and then it's probably outside of the deduction list, and you should not be deducting that out of business expense. If you ask me, if I don't have a lot of time spent with you, I don't know your situation, you go, Ying, can I deduct this penalty out of my business expense? My answer will always be no. And unless we know a lot more about what's going on, then maybe you can build a business case around it. Then you can deduct that legitimately. And at least it is a tax position that we are taking purposefully. It is not something that we just blindly deducted. So folks, generally speaking, penalty, do not deduct penalty. But if you have a case to deduct penalty, then you want to build a case around it to suggest that's your ordinary necessary business expense. All right. So now, what about the legal fees? Taxpayer will still be allowed to deduct the legal fees, right? And then, and this deduction for legal fees is allowed even where the taxpayer ultimately found to have violated the law. It means that even if you fail the court case, you can deduct the legal fees. All right, now someone says that, well, Ying, and when you were sending out this webinar, you said that, can I deduct my traffic ticket? That's the reason why I'm here. That is why I want to hear you talk and tell me, can I deduct my traffic ticket? Okay, now let me put it this way. When you are running a taxi business, so your taxi drivers, if all your taxi drivers, your employee, and they keep on having traffic ticket, and then you reimburse them because you believe that is a business expense and they should not be penalized for that. And your reimbursement that shows up on your financials to be a business expense because you're reimbursing business expenses that requested by your employee, out-of-pocket expense. Am I right? So if you have that policy in place, and if you pay for the traffic ticket of your employee and you deduct that as a business expense, I can see that have a stand in front of the auditors with IRS. But let's say if you are a business owner, you just recklessly driving because you always, you're always trying to do everything in the last minute. So you get traffic ticket on your own all the time. And you even get a citation from the police and telling you that you need to take a class to regain your license. Those are not deductible. And that is really become not a tax deduction issue. It's your life. It is your lifestyle issue, folks. Why are you keep on getting traffic ticket? Don't you realize that if you keep on getting traffic ticket, maybe you are so maybe you are so prone to have a traffic accident. Don't do that to yourself. And so everything has two sides. The traffic ticket, yes, deductible. Traffic ticket, no, not deductible. So it depends on your situation. So I have a Catherine Cat, and she actually put together all of these important links that you can look to justify whether what I said is even make sense to you. So if you take a Kodak moment of this particular slide, and then you can take your time, look into those articles online. You see how we reference IRS most of the time, okay? And of course, Bloomberg Tax is actually one of, well-known publication. And so we reference to them. Other than that, we really just stick with the IRS. And the internet is fun. And I always tell people it's for entertainment only. If you want to have a serious knowledge and do things properly, and you want to rely on governmental official website, not some sort of iknowtax.com. No, it's not that, right? All right, so I think this concludes today. I hope it's helpful. And, I get comments from you. And I just before I come into this webinar, and I have one of you wrote to me saying that thank you so much for always providing such a useful information on YouTube. So I was so happy. And thank you so much. Keep on encouraging us and give us recommendations. What would you like to hear? And we will see you on Saturday. I'll see you on Saturday again for my Saturday 1 hour. I know it's long, but I promise you, I always make it more fun, right? And you agree with me. I'll talk to you. Bye-bye.